Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So nice to see all your smiling faces here tonight. I'm Kay Rogness. I'm the director of the club. I've been here with Front Range almost as long as Methuselah has been around, or was around. But anyway, for about 22 years. So you'll see me in and out and with the teams at various times, and that's who I am. I'm the extra pair of hands on travel trips and helping out when I can, but most of the time I'm holed up in the back in front of my computer. So I want to thank you all very much for taking time out of your schedules. I'm the mother of two, the grandmother of three, so I have a very good idea of how hard it is to arrange family schedules sometimes so that everybody can get where they need to go and take care of everything, and I appreciate the time and the effort that you make to be here. We've got a really, I think, interesting presentation for you tonight. We want to introduce you to our staff, which I will do in just a minute, and then Jim will take over. Jim is our head coach, Jim Miret, and he has a very informative and knowledge-filled presentation to give you. And I think by the end of the evening, you're going to feel like someone's been slapping you back and forth because you've gotten so much information, which is fine because you'll have time to come back and ask questions. After we go through this presentation, then we will break into groups and you will meet with your team's coach, your individual team's coach. So that's our agenda for tonight. Our objective is to be out of here by 9 o'clock, so I will try to stay on task. Crossroads. And you'll hear a lot more about Crossroads as we go on. It's a huge tournament that we host every year. It's a national qualifier for the Junior Olympic Championships, which happen in the early summer every year someplace. This year they're in Minneapolis, I believe, for the girls. So, like I say, you'll hear more about that. It's over 2 weekends. Everybody gets involved. Last year we had 1,422 teams, so we're expecting that many teams back this year. We put up about 100 of these sport courts that are portable, as it were, down in the convention center, and we take over downtown Denver every spring for 2 weekends. So it's very exciting. We love doing it, and you'll hear lots more about it. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Jim because he has so much material to present that I don't want to overload you too much. I'm sure he'll do a good job of overloading you. So here
we're going to talk to you is Anita Richardson, and she's going to be our first presenter this evening. And some things I want you to know about Anita. We're very fortunate and excited to be working with her this year. She is a triple medalist in swimming from the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. And during that time as an international swimmer, she held several world records. She's worked with the Jacksonville Jaguars for 3 seasons and with other elite and professional athletes in several sports on how to eat for performance. Interestingly enough, her husband, Luke, is the head strength coach for the Denver Broncos. And myself, Tanner, and Ryan had a chance to spend 3 hours with Luke last spring talking about conditioning and training and kind of all the new paradigms that he's been introducing to the professional sport of football, and some things that Billy will be talking about to you guys a little bit later. Anita will be working with us this season to help our athletes, like I said, learn about ways to eat for their increased performance. So Anita's going to be first up.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of the club this year. The level that I got to in sport with 3 Olympic medals, which I brought with me tonight, if anybody wants to see them, sometimes people like to touch them and we could pass them around later. The biggest question I always get is, what got you to that level? And it's the biggest question I see for especially young, aspiring elite athletes is, how do you get there? What's the formula for success? And while I can say there's not one specific formula for success, I have worked with a lot of professional athletes and seen in myself some similar components. And one of the biggest components that I've seen is the desire to seek out new information. Just like your club is doing, your coaches are doing, and sat with my husband to learn some new things this year about training. Definitely seeking out new information and growing. And nutrition is I believe is one of the most underestimated components in sports for young people. The knowledge around nutrition in youth sports is really minimal in my experience. And so my whole goal here this year with the club in the next few months is just to really deliver bite-sized pieces of information that you guys can take home and apply. I'm not going to rearrange your whole pantry, I promise. It's not going to be this crazy, overwhelming experience around food. I want to be here for you. I want to support you and be a resource, really, that you can come to me, and I'm going to have a comments and questions box over there by my bulletin board, which is going to be up here in the next few days, and there'll be information for you guys every week, new information, bite-sized pieces that you can take home, some recipes, and great things that you can utilize with your up-and-coming champions. And that's really just what I want you guys to know about me, is that I want to be a resource, so please utilize me in the time I'm here. Thank you.
Anita is also going to be working with our chaperones for when our teams go on travel trips and help give them some nutritional guidance. All right, so now we're going to get to the presentation, and this is something we haven't really done before, and we're really excited about sharing this information with you folks tonight. You know, club volleyball is an expensive thing, time, money, and we really appreciate all the time and money that you are investing in your daughters and bringing them here. So tonight what we want to do is we want to share with you some of the beliefs, the aspects, the perspectives, the approaches that we take when it comes to developing your daughters. These are the kinds of things, as our approach has developed over the years, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Kids are going to go home and tell their parents that we did this, and we did that, and I got so much better, and this is so cool, and I've seen all this improvement. And as I talk to parents as their kids are leaving, I'm like, so what'd you think about this thing that we did? And they're like, what thing? Well, didn't your daughter tell you? She didn't tell us anything about that. And I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. So we thought, all right, if your daughters aren't going to tell you what we're doing, we're going to tell you what we're doing. So I think you're going to enjoy this. A little bit more about me. I've been coaching for over 30 years with the sport of volleyball. And I've learned a lot. And every year, much to the chagrin of my staff, we're changing things. But we're changing things for a reason. We're changing things because new information is always coming out about how to do things better. So I think back to my coaching in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and now, and it doesn't look anything like it used to look. I don't teach skills the same way. I don't develop teams the same way. We look at what we're doing totally differently, but it's all based on the knowledge that we have, that we've learned over time. One of the things that is kind of a driving force here is that we know too much today to do things the way we used to do them. I mean, think about anything that we're doing in life, right? Nobody's doing things the same way they did it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. People are, right? But we don't look at it that way. We're trying to take information, we're trying to continually learn, and we're trying to use this knowledge. So one of the driving things here for us is we're going to continually learn to continually improve. And we get good, we keep learning, we keep improving, we keep adjusting. And that's the kind of environment that we're trying to foster here. We've got three, I think, really critical goals that we're going to try and develop on each of the teams this season. The first one is we want to develop each of our teams to be high-functioning teams. Now, high-functioning teams cover a lot of different aspects. Obviously, we want them to play great volleyball, but we also want them to learn how to interact well with each other and help really bring the best out of each other. We want them to learn why they're doing what they're doing, so that they can become better players and learn how to impact the game more. We want them to learn. We want them to learn about sorry, I lost my notes here. Want them to learn how to train, compete, interact, and in the appropriate occasions, sacrifice their individual goals for what the team is trying to achieve. You know, nobody's here bringing their kids to run track or play tennis or any other individual sport. You've brought your daughters into an environment that volleyball, we believe, is the ultimate team sport. It's the only sport where you have to be able to do every single skill. It's required of every single player. So you've got to do every single skill in the sport of volleyball. And because we're in a team environment, sure, the individual is important, but the team is the most important. And that's an element that we think is a critical part of being a high-functioning team. The second element that we have here is we want your daughters to realize and maximize their potential. And we think we have a very unique approach here that gives her the best chance to do that. Lastly, we want to educate our players in the areas of performance enhancement, because we have multiple goals here. We want them to become the very best they can be while they're here, and then future-proof them so that as they go on to college, which we've had so many players go on, be successful in college, and then continue on to whatever level. If you go check out some of our boards out there in the lobby, we've had a good number of athletes go on and compete on the national team. We've had 22 players go on and play professionally overseas after college. And one of our big goals here, and one of the reasons why we think we've had so many players go on to achieve these high levels, is because we're educating them as to why we're doing what we're doing, so that when they're being exposed to strength coaches in the future, volleyball coaches in the future, they can have real conversations about them, about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they can really understand and be more active learners in this whole process of becoming great volleyball players. So these are the three big things that we're going to be focusing on with all of our teams. All right, so what current knowledge do we have? The first presenter, I'm technically the first presenter, but Kathleen Schauer is going to talk to you right now. Kay mentioned she's our 17-1 coach. She played here. She's the director of IT and network services here. Whenever I have a problem with IT stuff, Kathleen comes in and saves me. It's great. She got her bachelor's of science in bioengineering and decided to coach volleyball. Yeah. One of the things I love here is trying to bring people in around us who know a lot of things. Kathleen's an extremely bright individual, very smart. She played Division I volleyball at Binghamton University. It'll be her 5th year coaching with Front Range Volleyball Club. She played here for 6 years, played for me on our 18-1 team, and she's going to present what we think we know right now. And we feel like it's important to measure things. How do you know where you are if you don't measure where you are? And how do you know if you're getting any better if you don't know where you've been? So we measure a lot of things here. Kathleen's kind of the head of the measuring department, and she's going to talk about measurements.
See how I want to do this. All right, so hi, I'm Kathleen. I, like Kay and Jim mentioned, I grew up playing here, and I've decided to work here not only as a coach, but I also work here full-time. And the reason that I've kind of become this lifer at Front Range is because Front Range has a lot of values that I share and that resonate with me. So like Jim was talking about, I have a bioengineering background and I'm kind of an analytical person, and what I really appreciate about Front Range is that we really try to make decisions based on facts and not on hunches. And for the new parents and players here, that's going to become apparent from day one. So in our drills, we like to score things and we like to take stats and we like to measure things because we want our players to understand how they're performing so that they know how they're improving, and so they know what direction to go in to improve. So that's a value that really resonated with me as a player, but also as a coach in this organization. So for our organization as a coaching team, we want to take measurements of how we're improving our players. Are we affecting them? Are we creating change in them? And is it for the better? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So last year we took some measurements, and I want to kind of go over those and what we found. So last year one of the measurements we took was approach touch. So we have a Vertec, we set it up. All of our players get measured at the beginning of the year, and then we also measure them at the end of the year. And this is a really important measurement because obviously volleyball is played above the net, and this is going to help your player perform, but it's also an indicator of how is our player really adjusting to the training and the volume of the training. Are their muscles fatigued? That's going to show up in this measurement. So what we found last year is that out of all of our players, the average from the beginning of the year to the end of the year was an improvement of 2 inches. And that's really significant. I mean, this is right before our end of the year tournament. So it's important that we know that our players aren't fatigued. They're ready to go. They're maxing out. This is the highest that they've gotten over the course of the year was at the end of the year. So that's exactly what we wanted to create. So we were really excited about that. Some of our players improved as much as 4 inches, which is really remarkable. So we were pretty excited. Am I saying your daughter is going to improve 2 to 4 inches? No, right? We don't know that, but this is what we've seen in the past. Another measurement that we took was speed generation. So we did that in 2 ways. One is at the beginning of the year, we would have each player hit 5 balls, right? And then we would take speed guns and see at what miles per hour are they attacking the ball. Okay, we did that also from the service line. So they would serve, and we'd see how fast the ball was traveling over the net. Speed generation is really important in volleyball too. So if I'm a defender or a passer, it's really hard to pass when the ball's traveling at a higher speed, right? It's one of the main things that makes it really hard to counterattack. So this is an important measurement. We found that around 80% of our players improved their attack velocity in 1 year, which is really, really significant, especially taking into account that we also measured accuracy with this. So we found that 80% of our players also improved their accuracy. So some players would come in, the first day they would hit 1 out of 5 balls in the court. By the last day, some of them were hitting 5 out of 5 balls in the court, right? So some of them were making 80% jumps. We saw 80% of our players actually improving their accuracy while improving their speed, which is a really challenging thing to do. We also saw the same thing with our service speed, improving around 70% of our players improving their service speed, some up to 7 miles per hour. For attack speed, we found that some players improved up to 18 miles per hour, which is just huge. On average, you know, we would see our teams on average improve overall around 4 miles per hour, which is really significant in one season. So we were really excited to see that. Now, what does all this mean? I kind of want to put these numbers into context for you guys. So we checked to see what the Olympic team in the US, how hard were these women hitting the ball? What was the speed generation that they were creating? And the top speed that they recorded was 62 miles per hour. So if you think about baseball, sometimes we hear like, oh, 100 miles per hour, that's normal. Our sport, 62 is the ceiling. That is what the top athletes are generating that have played the most amount of volleyball. The most skilled players in our sport are hitting 62 miles per hour. Now, we've seen in our gym, some of our high school players as young as freshmen are hitting the ball at 50 miles per hour. That's about 80% of the way to that ceiling. That is a lot, okay? That is very, very fast for our sport, okay? Is everyone hitting that? No, right? So our middle school players, they're hitting the ball around 30 miles per hour, right? 20s, in the mid 30s. High school players are in the mid 30s to 40s. Our top players are hitting around 50 miles per hour. So just to put the speeds in context, when your daughter comes home and talks about it, you can put it into context. What I really want you guys to take away from this is that our players might be at their ceiling their high school season, okay? They might be there. If not, they're rapidly approaching it. Also for approach touch, you know, Jim talked about being here for over 30 years. He's found that about 80% of his players actually reach their personal record with their approach touch on his team on 18 black. And I know from experience that's what I did. The highest I ever touched was in the Front Range gym when I was on 18 black. When I went into college, we still get tested. I never touched as high as I did at Front Range, and we're seeing that with about 80% of our players. So not only with velocity generation, but also with approach touch, players are hitting their ceiling in high school or are very, very close to it. So what does all this mean? Well, for one thing, our training procedures, we are seeing improvements in our players with what we're doing here. So that's really important, and we're seeing it over the course of one season, which is really hard to do. Over the course of several seasons, obviously we're seeing huge improvements. So that was really good for us to see. We're going to continue to measure to make sure that we're on the right track. Yeah. Or are very, very close to it. So what does all this mean? Well, for one thing, our training procedures, we are seeing improvements in our players with what we're doing here. So that's really important, and we're seeing it over the course of one season, which is really hard to do. Over the course of several seasons, obviously we're seeing huge improvements. So that was really good for us to see. We're going to continue to measure to make sure that we're on the right track. Yeah?
I have a question. Speed is good, but how do you balance from service errors? Because I remember a few years ago, a men's volleyball team I thought lost because of service errors. That's a lot of risk. What's the goal? Well, I'm not getting ahead.
No, it's okay.
What's the goal of the service error? Because that frustrates me more watching a great team lose from service errors.
Great question.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about the measurement side first, and then I'll let Jim get into it. No, I want to answer that question with how we measured it. So, for when we were taking the measurements, we would have a player serve 5 balls. Out of those 5, what was the speed that they were creating? If they missed, we did not count that speed. So that's kind of how we measured it. And then we also decided to take how many balls out of those 5 did they get in the court, and that was kind of our accuracy measurement there. But I'll have Jim kind of elaborate a little bit.
When we're talking about what we're trying to get done in matches, obviously we're trying to increase velocity and increase accuracy at the same time. We know statistically that at any level, if we really want to be nationally competitive at any age, we can tolerate about 2 service errors per set. But the caveat to that is we can serve and not miss ever by just lobbing balls into the opponent, right? So it isn't about not missing serves. It's about hitting the ball at your top velocity and only missing, as a team, about 2 times per set. So those are the goals that we're shooting for.
Hey, Jim, can I touch on that?
Yep.
From a speed perspective, you have to understand there are speed windows for every one of your athletes developing. Most of those windows, by the time your daughter's 14 or 15, they're maxed, okay? Even if you do the greatest conditioning, the greatest mechanics after that, she may not reach it. The point I really want to get to is at a young age, in the U.S., we're so focused on technique at young ages. Oftentimes in other countries, they're really focusing at the younger ages, 12, 13, when those windows really need to be improved. That's when you have to develop speed. So from my perspective, I would tell you to your daughter to jump high, to run fast, to hit hard. There's times where I want them to swing hard. And from my perspective, I'm trying to develop that speed, knowing that in time, they're going to work on the technique and the mechanics and getting in the court. But if we don't get that speed developed at a young age, she might not ever get it. So just got to understand.
And as that speed's getting developed, we have to tolerate more errors. And that's another important thing because, you know, having coached internationally, one of the biggest differences I saw when I was thinking internationally, one of the biggest differences I saw was that other international teams were very good, could hit the ball very hard and hit it in. And our players didn't generate the kind of velocity that we were playing against. You know, and I think it's directly what Billy's saying. You know, people are too worried in this country about keeping the ball in young, right? To the point of kids develop poor technical habits, they miss these speed windows, and then we can never get them to generate it because we've missed the window. So we try and like really balance what we know we have to do at the critical moments in a kid's development to get the max out of her eventually, with trying to win at the same time.
Great question. So like we talked about, so a lot of our players are really close to their velocity ceiling and also their vertical ceiling, and they might reach them in high school. So that means that we have to do our part to protect our players' bodies from the stress of those impacts. Every time a player is hitting at 40, 50 miles per hour, their body has to absorb some of that. Also, when they're reaching a personal record from a vertical, that impact every single hitting repetition, their body has to absorb. So we, at the same time as trying to get them to generate these velocities, we have to protect them with proper biomechanics. So with that, I want to also talk about our injury rate. So the NCAA came out with a report maybe in the last couple weeks that we just looked at, and they're reporting that 4.3 injuries are occurring for every 1,000 exposures, and they're counting exposures as a competition or a practice. So that means that they're getting around 6 injuries per season per team. So around 6 players are getting injured in their college season on one team. Our season is about twice as long as the college season, and we're experiencing about half of that amount of injury, so half the injury rate. So that's something we're also really proud of when we're trying to generate these velocities and these impacts. So with
technology. There have been a lot of paradigm shifts going on in the field of strength and conditioning, as well as the game is always evolving and improving. And what we're trying to do is keep up with all that stuff and then use that stuff. Billy has got a master's degree in exercise science. He's been designing our programming since 2003. And from a volleyball coaching perspective, I had to go outside of volleyball to learn how to coach volleyball better from a biomechanics standpoint because of Billy's knowledge base, and how to condition athletes better so that they could max themselves out and reduce their injury rate. Like Kathleen mentioned, it's Billy's programming that's responsible for 80% of our athletes reaching their top vertical jump while they're in our program. And he's also a big reason behind why our injury rate is so low. So Billy Glisan is going to be talking to you now.
Good evening. How's everybody? I'm not much of a talker while you sit. I'm a person that teaches your daughters to move. So with that being said, you're going to move a little bit. So quickly, briefly, stand for a second. Let's get some blood going. You're not going to have to do any exercise. Don't worry about it. You go to the next slide. You were actually just a second ago training. What were you training for before I had you stand up? Sitting, right? What are you training for right now? Standing. We're making progress. If your daughters came in and trained like you're training either before or right now, how would you feel about that? Would they get better at volleyball? Okay? So over the years, I can tell you, I've been working with athletes for a long time, 20 years plus, right? And I've heard all kinds of questions, good questions, bad questions from parents. And probably had the bad parents too. When parents come and say, my daughter needs to get in volleyball shape, right? Do you need to get in volleyball shape? Yeah. So what are you going to have her do? I'm going to have her go out and start running, run 5 miles. Is that a good conditioning activity for a volleyball player? Okay. 5 or 10 years ago, I'd get a lot of yeses, and I'll still get that parent asking, Well, I'm just going to go have her get on the elliptical at the gym, right? I'm going to have her lift weights. I'm going to make her strong, okay? Wonderful, okay? Have a seat, please. Training for volleyball is very specific. And I'm going to show you some examples tonight of some volleyball skills that your daughter is going to be performing, right? And we're trying to get your daughter better. One of the perspectives I'm going to give you tonight, since I'm a day or two over 40, is I've sat where you've sat, right? I had a daughter that I coached. We're in Fort Collins. She played basketball. She went on and played college basketball, right? I know what it's like to train a young lady, but I've also sat on this side of it and had her play club that I didn't coach. I know what it's like. I'm going to tell you my objective working with your daughters is not to get a W. That's Jim's job and the coaches at Front Range. They're about wins, right, and not losses. That's not how I look at your daughter. I look at your daughter long term, right? I'm 60. I want your daughter to be doing what I'm doing when I'm 60, right? I can still hit a golf ball 300 yards. I can do a lot of things because I've stayed fit. And my back still works, and my shoulder still works, and my ankles and hips still work. Knock on wood. So when I work with your daughters, I understand from your perspective where you're going. I know why you're sitting here. I know your motivations. We're going to help you with that. But I'm also going to tell you I'm a fish out of water. I always have been. I worked with the largest spine center in the nation with some of the best therapists, orthopedic surgeons, and what I do with your daughter is going to be different from what they're doing down the street 3 blocks from here. I guarantee it, okay? But I'm going to bring to you knowledge, skills, and expertise to make your daughter better and keep your daughter healthy, not only while she's here at Front Range, but long term. My philosophy is also that I want your daughter to learn up here, because by the time they're 17 or 18, they ought to understand, and not just by me or any other coach, do this and they go do it. They need to understand up here why they're doing it. For those that are good enough and lucky enough to go play college, they need to start making their own decisions about what makes sense in terms of their training for their back, their hip, their shoulder, their ankle. So you need to know that, and anytime you're here and I'm around, please ask me, but you may not get the standard question and answer from me. I'll give you probably more than you want. Training's very specific for volleyball. I'm going to take you into, let's go attacking first. I'm going to show you some video clips, and I'm going to get real specific with some visuals, because I know you want to see visuals rather than listen to me talk. We're going to play that first clip twice. It's going to play really quickly. Watch that again. Stop. What'd you see? What you should have just seen was one of the most complex movements there are in sports. For a volleyball athlete, this is an international level Olympic athlete, and I'm going to tell you his mechanics, and I'm going to slow this down and show you his mechanics, are as good as anybody in the world, male or female. He hits the ball hard, but what just happened? What did you see? What did you see? Nothing. It was a blur. What did you see? It was a blur. We're going to go a little slower. Kathleen, go a little forward for me. Get me up to a reverse power C in the air. I spend a lot of time working with athletes. I work with athletes to teach them hit, throw, and kick harder, okay? And tolerate hitting, throwing, and kicking harder. This individual right in there, that's great right there. I want you to get some visuals. The first thing I want you to notice, and there was already another visual that was up there tonight of a hitter. A hitter in the air, male or female, at the best level, best mechanics, are going to have their knees and legs up behind their body. Remember that, because when I start showing you some strength and conditioning exercises tonight that are being taught down the street or elsewhere, that's not what they're teaching them. They're teaching them all the cool, popular, trendy stuff. I don't teach popular, cool, trendy stuff. I teach things that improve their performance and keep them from getting hurt. It might be different, and probably is different from what happens down the street. Right here, so you see the knees behind them. We're going to click forward just a couple steps. Imagine there was a dot on this guy's right hip. When it started, that right hip was pointing over towards the right antenna. What do you see his hip doing? It's turning, it's rotating, okay? But now wait a second. We want this guy to hit harder. How do you do that? How do you improve your daughter's arm swing? Work on arm swing, right? And in volleyball, all you hear about is arm swing. Make their arm swing greater. I'm going to tell you that volleyball is being taught across the country, right, based on arm swing. And I'm going to tell you every other sport where they hit, throw, or kick, their hips turn first, right? It starts from the ground up. Their feet go first. There's a reason the legs are behind them. They're going to use their legs to generate more power because there's a lot of strength in the lower body. Their hips turn, then their shoulders turn, and then, so if we go a couple frames forward, what you'll notice, and if you'll just slide that back and forth a couple times, Kathleen. Let's just go back a couple frames. You're going to see, the first thing you're going to watch, we'll go all the way back to that reverse C position, and you can't see the C, but his legs are going to kick to start the motion, coming forward. Let's go the other way. He gets up in the air, the legs are going to kick, the hips are going to turn, the shoulder's going to come through, and look, the arm's still way behind the body. Every other sport does that. I work with the hitting coach and the pitching coach from the Rockies, right? What happens in baseball when they're throwing 90 or 100 miles an hour? But that's what we've been teaching in volleyball, and we wonder why there's shoulder problems in volleyball, right? They step, they turn their hips, they turn their shoulder, the arm comes through. That's what we teach in volleyball. It's not this crazy science, it's basically mechanics, it's muscles, it's energy. Let's go forward. So if I asked you, what did the legs do? What were the legs positioned in the air? What were they? Up behind them, right? What did the hips do? Rotated. What did the shoulders do? Rotated when? After the hips. What did the arm do? It came through last. Remember that. When your daughter comes, depending on her age, and I'm going to show you some 12 or 13s in a second, they're not going to look anything like that. But this is what we want them to look like. But to get them to look like that, are you training right now to get there? You're sitting right now, you're training to sit, right? Everything you do is very specific. If we want someone to hit like that, we have to train them to move like that. I'm not a person, I'm a strength coach, right? I'm an exercise physiologist, and I'm going to teach strength. I'm not going to teach general strength. They're not going to be looking in front of the mirror doing bicep curls, working on their beach muscles. I don't care how they look in front of the mirror. I care how they look on the court, how much force they can generate, and when they land, we'll talk about that, how they land so they don't blow up their ACL in the process. Let's go to the next please. All right, watch this serving mechanics. Go one more time back through that if you would. And what I want you to know is the point is, what you saw the outside hitter doing was the exact same thing on a power serve at the international level. They ought to be the same. Same mechanics, legs up behind the air, legs kick, hips turn, shoulder turn, arm comes through. Wonderful, let's move on. We go to the international level for women. Okay, freeze right there at the top. Glad you're running it and not me. Right there, legs aren't as good. Right leg's up, left leg's down, okay? She's not as mature with her hitting as the guy was, okay? Guys can do a lot more things than women. That's not how I look at it. That's true. I'm going to try to teach your daughters to be just like that guy up there. It's not going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks. All right, what do we also notice? Hip's going to turn. Go ahead. Leg's going to kick, hip's going to turn, shoulder's going to come through. Look where the arm is. It's behind the turn of the body. Very good. Let's move forward. You got that visual for hitting? That's what we're trying to teach. Freeze that. This is a homegrown Front Range product, right? This girl played here, played at Duke, right? Played pro ball, okay? This is how it's done. I can take her and show you exactly when I go do a clinic, that's who I show, okay? It's her. Because we're going to take her through, we're going to go to this position in the air. What are we going to see? Legs up behind the body. As she goes frame forward to start to hit, legs are going to kick, hips are going to turn, shoulders coming through, arms coming through last, okay? That's what we teach. It's very specific. Make sense? Let's move forward. There's 12. Look the same? No. It will take time. But you understand visually what we're working towards. A very highly complex movement. Probably, in my opinion, the hardest movement there is in sport. Because you're not doing it on the ground. You're up in the air and you're trying to move your body, twist your body, hit a ball that's moving, and hit it to the right spot, right? A lot going on. Okay, move forward till it freezes. Let's just go a frame at a time and freeze. One more, a couple more frames. Boom, right there, okay? What's also happening, you can go get on Google, right, and go get on YouTube, and you can find any instruction you want for any sport. And I'm going to tell you, as someone that spent a lot of time, basically as a geek, looking at anatomy and physiology, and working with a lot of therapists and a lot of docs, this is what's called the high elbow setup position in volleyball. It's what's being taught. It's being taught all over the country. I'm going to also tell you that the people that are teaching that don't understand the anatomy of the shoulder very well. because a lot of people that are doing that, it is, and I'm going to borrow what you said to me, or what your question from a little bit ago. It's easy to teach this. It's really easy, okay? It's a lot harder to teach this that looks more like baseball, okay? But my job is to, I could teach them, really simple, how to bring their elbow up and do that, and they can hit the ball hard. But what's the objective? Hit harder and tolerate hitting harder. Long term, my objective is to make sure they can hit through their high school years, their college years, and if they're good enough to play pro, I'm not going to teach them to go do this high elbow position, right? So when the elbow comes right up by the ear, and you hear that, you're going to read about it, a lot of people teach it. I'm going to let you watch a video that we shot with also a former Front Range player this summer. And I hope you can hear this, but it's a couple minutes long, so bear with me. We're going to try to give you a visual for part of what's going on with the anatomy of the shoulder. I want to give you a good visual of kind of what's happening. So this is the scapula, this is the shoulder joint, this is the humerus, this long bone here. What I want you to notice is this piece of yellow tubing is representing what the muscle part of the rotator cuff, the top part of it, called the supraspinatus. And what can happen is that arm raises up, is this bone, when it comes up here, can actually start to pinch off this opening or shut down this opening where the supraspinatus comes out and actually attaches to the humerus. So in this case, if she continues to lift her elbow up above shoulder level, we actually can pinch that area off. And oftentimes that might be referred to with volleyball players who get, quote, a hot shoulder and inflamed shoulder. They get anterior superior impingement. What that means is, anterior meaning the front of the shoulder, superior meaning the top, they can get pain, inflammation on the top and front part of their shoulder. And oftentimes it's just a function of how high they're lifting their elbow. If we lift the elbow higher than shoulder level, then would that continue to impinge there? So when we're hitting, and if we have her take just solely an arm swing that starts with her arm in front of her body, and she lifts a straight arm up to go ahead and swing, and she raises it way up, we can get into that same position to where we're impinging on that supraspinatus or the other tissues that might be there. If she swings a lot like that, mechanically that can put stress once again on the supraspinatus or other tissues there, cause inflammation. Down the road we can get bone spurs that get created on the bottom of the shoulder, top of the humeral head in that joint, and it can actually fray on that part of the rotator cuff, the supraspinatus. That can create significant problems and lead to surgery. All right, freeze her right at the top, please. Right there. The difference in the arm swing that you see Becky doing here and the standard high elbow swing setup, the high elbow once again is real easy to teach. You'll pay your daughter more than likely could come home with a shoulder that's sore. A lot more obviously hopefully is the message that can happen. If you look at this where her arm is, if you look at the line of the shoulder, the green line there, as she goes up to swing, her elbow doesn't come up first. She comes back like she's throwing. And basically this part of her arm is in line with her shoulder. She can generate and tolerate rotational forces, arm swing, arm force, arm torque, much better in that position, right? Her elbow is going to come up, but it's going to come up later, right? And when it comes up later, go up to the top and actually it may not go to the top on this one. See if it goes any further. Is that the end of it? I'll just give you a visual. So basically what's going to happen, one of the things, this is getting into the weeds and I'll stop here. When she goes to contact to keep from doing that and pinching off this area, the good hitters all get here, okay? Their whole body turns. If you watch a professional pitcher throwing to home, they do the same thing. They don't stand up straight and do this. When they go to release, you'll see their whole body tipped over. It allows the shoulder to generate and tolerate arm speed and torque. Make sense? Let's go to that second video, please. Hopefully what blocking, please. Hopefully what I just want you to get, and the next two won't be that long, I promise. Training's very specific. We're going to teach a highly complex movement pattern for hitting and blocking. It has to be trained very specifically. All right, let's go slowly forward. Stop when he gets up into that position. We're going to talk about blocking now, a different volleyball skill, obviously, but just repetition's a big part of learning. Look at this guy when he gets in the air. International player, where's his legs? Behind his back. Where's his arm? Stop right there, please. Arm is in line with the shoulder. It's not up here yet, okay? That's what we're going to teach. for now, and if you want to talk about it at some point when you're here, we can talk about the mechanics of the shoulder, and I can put you to sleep faster, okay? What I want you to notice here, we're talking about blocking. These three blockers, look how close they are to the net. Let's go to the next one, Kathleen. Their body is right up on the net. Look at these two girls, right? Oops, back up just a hair. So the two blockers here, when they go up in the air, look how close they are to the net. Oh no, by the way, watch her arm swing, watch her legs up behind her, starting to see a trend. But in terms of blocking, they're really tight to the net. Go forward, please. This is our man Ryan. He's going out to demonstrate to give you a side view. And part of the technique that we're looking for is we want to minimize any distance in the air when he goes to block the ball from his body away from the net or his arms away from the net, right? We don't want the ball coming over on this side of the net. That's good. Let's go to the next piece. All right, here's our man Tanner. Go back a hair. I said to you right there, right to the top. Boom, perfect. Box jumps, right? It's the cool thing to do. Many of you guys are going to work out, everybody's doing box jumps now, right? We haven't done box jumps in probably 10 years, okay? And I'm going to show you why.
You never have to do box jumps.
Yeah, never. And box jumps are cool. The box jumps will train you to jump up on a box with your legs and knees in front of you, right? Remember what I showed you in blocking, where the leg's supposed to be? Behind your body, right? Tanner, as he'll tell you here in a little bit when he comes up to talk, that's how he was trained when he played volleyball, right? And now when he goes up to block jump, look at his technique. His body's just doing what it's been trained to do. Legs come up in front. Wonderful if you're a sport that requires that to happen. Not so great when you're in a sport that this needs to happen with your legs behind you. Okay, let's go forward, please. This is Tanner block jumping. His natural technique. Body falling away as he goes up. If I continue, the video won't play, it's froze there. But if we continue to work on this, his body's going away from the net. It's making a bigger space, his arm's going further away. More tendency for the ball to fall on his side of the net, right? Not good. We train, and so this is Ryan once again, and we train what we call Superman jumps. That's what we're looking for. We want the body to be able to go straight up and down, not the legs coming up in front. One of the ways we train vertical jump, it's once again very specific to volleyball. We're going to use the yarn, we're going to use these things, and we're going to measure power. And over the course of the year, your athlete ought to be able to jump up with the legs straight or legs coming behind. Both of those would be good. Once again, training's very specific. Next video, please. And freeze. So in a passing posture, we're going to look at these guys, and a couple of these guys will show us the same thing. One of the things that we're looking for is the ability for the spine from the head to the tail to be really long and the hips to open up and feet going out. That's really important for good passing posture. In just a second, once again, I'm going to show you a couple different exercises, show you one that's better than another in terms of the way to teach these mechanics. You'll see here with the green lines kind of the same thing, right? We want the spine to be long, straight line there, and we're looking for these kind of angles, all right? Let's go forward. In fact, let's just go all the way into the squat, please. All right, this is a very common exercise. Go ahead and go down to the bottom of that. This is a back squat. Common exercise. Squat's one of the biggest, most common exercises in the strength conditioning world. It's a great exercise for certain things, right? I'm comparing just a second ago. Remember I showed you this straight spine? Well, that looks good, the straight spine. The only problem is he's looking down at the ground with his hips at that angle. His legs and hips are in front of him there. Training's very specific. If this is the exercise he does, he's going to get better at that exercise. His body's going to learn to do that movement with greater strength. No problem if that's going to carry over into something specific we're trying to build. Let's go forward. I told you I was a fish out of water. Can you drag that player bar out of the way up? Yeah. There you go. Thank you. Okay. So we use different things, and I will tell you this. Over the course of the last 15 years that I've been here, we've changed equipment how many times? Don't ask Kay. Okay? We've evolved. And I've taught Olympic lifts. We don't do Olympic lifts anymore. We've taught pretty much everything. I've run the whole gamut, right? I've worked with athletes for probably 15 or 20 years. We've went away from having numerous platforms. We've went through all kinds of different iterations. This is a kettlebell. We do kettlebells, not kettlebell swings. Okay? We do things where we're trying to build this long spine with the hips out, hips open. And go ahead and take him next to the next part of that, Kathleen, where he drops the bell. So we're going to do things once again, this is the last video I'll show you on this, that basically starts to get to, keep going. When he drops the bell, this starts to show a passing posture, right? Training specific. So we're going to make his legs strong, or her legs strong. We're going to keep their back in a good position. We're going to train their core, but we're going to train it very specific into a passing posture. So there with his arms out, he could very easily, he's trying to demonstrate what it would be like to put his hands out in the platform to pass the ball. Training's very specific. Last video, please. Actually, one more before that, the landing. All right, freeze right there. This is the arm swing I was showing you earlier, but now what I'm going to talk about is what goes up comes down, right? When we started, Jim, how long ago? 2 years ago, 20 years ago when we started? When I first came in the first year, Jim measured, pardon me, vertical jump every week. And we had a board over there as a different facility, but we tracked and trended vertical jump on every athlete, right? And we tested agility every week with a clock, right? Because he was trying to see if I knew what I was talking about, if the numbers were going to change, right? Did the numbers change? Yes. In a couple years, I went back to Jim and said, that's all cool, and everybody's in love with vertical jump. But what I was starting to see was the girls that were 6'3" and 6'5" start to break down every year, right? And what I was seeing was they went from high school playing high school. How tall are you? Thank you. Okay. Did you play volleyball? Okay. So I'm not picking on you, but I just noticed I was talking about 6'3", 6'5". What I was seeing was girls that were 6'3" and 6'5", everybody looked at them and said, oh my gosh, they're big and they're strong and they're so capable. What I was seeing was the 6'3" and 6'5" girls were playing high school, going directly into club and playing for Front Range. Then they were going and playing national ball or overseas or something else. They had no time to do what? Recover, okay? So it's not, one of the things, the message tonight is it's not all about how hard you push your daughter, right? And we start talking about taking them and getting outside training on top of what we're doing. Don't, because all you're going to do is probably undo what we're trying to do, which is control how hard they work, how many jumps they get, the stresses on their shoulder, the stresses on their back. We want athletes to be able to get better and not get injured, stay on the court, and so do you. Because if you pay the time and money to train, and then you go to the qualifier, you want your daughter healthy, don't you? You need her to be seen. If her back hurts and shoulder hurts, guess what? You've went through the whole year, and now you get to AAUs or JOs or something, and your daughter's hurt. You're not going to be very happy, nor is your daughter. So one of the messages is we want to make sure and control what goes on from an injury perspective. Be careful about giving them outside training because we're trying to control the variables inside. In this position, what's one of the most common injuries that's happening in volleyball? Ankles and ACLs, right? Okay. An ACL, this lady's landing in a position on one leg. I'll spare you the long-winded answer, or long-winded introduction. She's in a really bad position. She's one landing away from blowing out her ACL. We've seen that over and over the course of years, and what we do once again is we do different things that are going to look like to you. You're going to look at something and say, what are they doing with that exercise, right? Because what you want to see is push-ups and big heavy sprints, and your kid maybe bent over the trash can throwing up, and none of that's going to happen. If they're throwing up, it's because they got the flu. It's not because they're working out at that intensity. Let's go forward. When you see this, what's she working on? Jumping, right? And landing, okay? This is Nicole Edelman, just graduated from CU, played at Front Range, played at CU for 4 years, now playing overseas, okay? So this is this summer me working with her on jumping and moving and sprinting, okay? Now watch. Just let that one play. What's she working on? Say again, louder. I got old ears. Say again.
Balance.
Balance, okay. Did I scare you? Oh my God, he looked at me and asked a question.
I got it.
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me back. Why would she work on balance? What's balance going to do for her? It's going to help her hit the ball harder? Nope. Stabilizer, because what goes up comes down. What comes down is her ankle and her hips are her savior. That's the only control she has for her knee laterally, okay? We've got to train them, and so my point to you is real simple. When you see balance activities, when you see A, think B. What's B? Injury prevention. Don't get caught up into the thing that my kid's not throwing up in the trash can. You know, she's not doing this great workout where her hamstrings are sore. That's not the game I play, okay? The game I play is making sure that in this case she was getting ready to go overseas to play professional volleyball, that her body's ready to go handle that load, just like it is for your daughters out here. Let's go to the last video, the timing video, please. How am I doing, Jim? 3 minutes, right? Jim? What? I'm at 3 minutes yet? I'm almost done. Watch the green, but not so fast. Start over back from the beginning, will you? Before you start, hit pause for a second. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to see over on the green side some data. That data is seconds, okay? I want you to tell me what the average length of a volleyball rally is in seconds. Watch the green, it'll give you a little clue. Go for it. Can you see over me? Just kick me, you will here in a few weeks. Can you see? This is in slow motion, so what was the length of that first rally? 4.6 seconds. Keep going. The red is the time between the points, right? The recovery time. Also important if you're training them. You can just Kathleen, or scroll through. 8 seconds on the second rally. I'm going to cut you to the chase. If we let this play, the average volleyball rally, depending on how good the volleyball players are, the more skilled they are, the longer the rally is going to be. But those rallies more than likely won't last over 10 seconds. I'm good, I've seen enough. PDF, please. What was the time again? How many seconds? Matt, come here. But what's the total?
10.
Less than 10, right? Remember that. When you tell your daughter to go out and run 5 miles, how long is it going to take her? 3 hours, you're getting her ready for volleyball, right? No, you're not. Do things that are 10 seconds or less, you'll get her ready for volleyball rallies, okay? I know that doesn't make sense. Last thing I'm going to tell you, if you look up here, this is this technical side, sorry, but I'm going to make it simple. 0 to 10 seconds, there's 3 energy systems in the body you use, right? Right now you're using this one over here. You've been sitting for 2 minutes or longer. That's the aerobic energy system. When you go get on a bike, you go get on the treadmill, you run, you jog for anything longer than 2 minutes, that's the aerobic system, okay? We're going to spend maybe 20% of our time this year working on that. So aerobic energy, aerobic training is not important for volleyball because volleyball, I shouldn't say it's not important, it's not as important as this 0 to 10 seconds, right? Because you saw the rally. That's what we have to train. We have to train the right energy system. 75% of the time you'll see us training, especially in the strength and conditioning area, is going to be spent doing things that are 0 to 10 seconds. So when we're working on jumping fast, hitting hard, moving quickly, that's what we're doing. Taking your daughter and having her go get on a treadmill for 30 minutes will probably undo everything we're trying to do from a speed perspective, if that makes sense, right? The second thing, the second time period. Did I just get shut off? That was the hook. The last energy system, 11 seconds to 120 seconds. If you went and sat against the wall, you put a bar on your back and squatted for longer than 11 seconds, right? You'll start building up what? Lactic acid. What's lactic acid feel like? It hurts, okay? We're not really training much of the lactic acid system here, right? So if you tell your daughter, hey, I want you to get your legs stronger because I see you're not getting down very low on the ground, And you go tell them to stand against the wall and do wall squats for 2 minutes. Is that going to help her? Yeah, if you want her to stand against the wall for 2 minutes. If you want her to play 0 to 10 seconds fast and explosively, train the right energy system, okay? I'm going to close by saying what we were trying to do, what I was trying to do is show you that training is very specific. There's a lot of science behind it, and just doing bench press, doing biceps in the mirror, something that might make your daughter look better, and in high school and middle school, it looks cool to look good. Doing trendy things, right, like box jumps might be really good for certain sports. It's not for what we're trying to do. I'd be happy at any point in time, to talk to you if you want to talk further, and if you come up and say, why are they doing that? I'm pretty sure there's a good answer, and it's based on science or what we're trying to do with volleyball. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Also want to point out that I told you there's a lot of paradigm shifts in training, right? And we're trying to implement those paradigm shifts. Question?
What was just presented to us, is that something that you'll be presenting to our daughters? Because that was a very powerful presentation. And for my daughter's a freshman in high school. She's cerebral sometimes. And
Not here, hopefully.
no, but she should be. I think she should be. I don't know why the parents are just here, and I'm a huge fan of you, but I want my daughter to see that. I want her to see the technique. I want her to see the strength conditioning. I want her to know that she's going to peak out. And one of the biggest struggles, and I say this lovingly, is that she did not take chances last year, and this club has been awesome for her. She did not take chances last year because of her stats. Okay, so she did not. She was afraid to show the strength. She was afraid to go into the to the net, and so finding that balance of eliminating errors, which will drive him crazy, but also getting my daughter up to her maximum speed is really important.
It is important. It's a very tricky balance that we're trying to do, right? Because we have to worry about errors, because otherwise we won't win. Right. You know what I mean? So we try and set up practices so that they've got at least some time that's unstatted, where they can work on power generation, so that over time the errors eventually go down and the power goes up.
Presenting this to them?
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, I like each coach to explain kind of our approach throughout the season and multiple times to the kids. Obviously, there's a long presentation, right? Kids, as you know, I'm tweeting something, right? And now I'm tweeting something else, and I'm reading it. So what we've found is that by having them do it, and as we do it, hey, today we're going to explain this. This is why we're doing this. Tomorrow we're going to explain that. This is why we're doing that, and then kind of showing it to them this way. We are filming this. We're going to put this up on a YouTube channel that we're all going to send to you in our next newsletter, and sit your daughters down in front of it, you know what I mean, and make them watch it. So. Great question.
And one last thing I need to hit on that I skipped one slide, and that's this. If I haven't already made the point, I know what it's like. You want daughters, right? And so the tendency is to send your daughter out to get extra training, right? And what I'm going to tell you, if it's not already clear, is you got to be really careful with that. In fact, you shouldn't do it, because hopefully it should be clear. We're really trying to pay attention to do the right things for volleyball. There's a lot of good strength and conditioning coaches or trainers that are out there that have maybe never stepped on the volleyball court. They don't understand the movements. They don't understand the energy systems, what we're trying to train. It's nothing wrong against them. It's just, it's different. And do that when they're not in season here. When they need some general off-season training, go do that. The worst thing back that I said earlier is, you spend all this money and all this time training, you get to an event where the recruiters are looking at your daughters, which is what you want, and if that coach isn't paying attention like we do to tapering or peaking at the right time, that kid's going to show up at an event and her legs are dead, her arm's dead, and it's going to be a really bad scene, okay? So understand, training outside is really probably not appropriate within the season. Do it after the season, and hopefully now you have an understanding why. That's just we're on a different page.
And a quick story about that. I had my top. We were going into Crossroads one year, and she says to me as we're walking in for our serve pass the day before, she goes, "Man, my legs are shot." I go, "What do you mean your legs are shot?" Because Billy cycles all of our training throughout the year. So we've been tapering before that event. And she said, "Man, my legs are shot. I can't do anything." And I go, "Why?" And she goes, "Well, in my strength training class at high school, we're maxing out to get our grade." And I'm like, "It's Crossroads this weekend. You understand that, right?" So needless to say, she did not have her best event. All right, so paradigm shifts happening there. Next person up is going to be Tanner. Tanner's our athletic trainer, coaches our 16-2 team. It's her third year with us. Not only does Tanner have all that stuff up there, but Tanner also will evaluate athletes. He's like our first line of defense for injury. If the kid's got a hot shoulder, we want him to know about it so we can evaluate her immediately. Doesn't mean we're going to shut her down. We're going to evaluate her. He's going to evaluate her because he's got that training behind him. And the other thing that Tanner helps us do is implement and adjust the programs that Billy designs for us. So Tanner's going to speak.
All right. That's cool. Since you've already seen basically how much better Ryan is at volleyball than I am on the screen, and how awful I move, it's all the training. I just want to share a little bit about who I am. Obviously, I'm Tanner. I'm the athletic trainer, as he just told you. But tell you about my history in sports and volleyball and training and injuries, which might be a little bit more than you want to know, but we're going to go there. So I played soccer my whole life. That was the bread and butter. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. From birth until I was 18, I played club. And that's what I wanted to do in college. It wasn't until my junior year in high school that I fell in love with volleyball, and I was like, okay, I want to make a go at this. So I had dreams of playing professionally. Beach was what I wanted to play, but because the way I trained, I never had the opportunity to get to that place. And so, oh, no, it's skipping ahead. So I just want to kind of give you a history of my ailments. Real quick, don't freak out. I'm here, I'm talking to you, I'm not going to fall over dead on the floor, it's going to be okay. I was the kid who was always in the PT clinic, always in the doctor's office, always at the chiro, every single week, from middle school all the way up until really a couple years ago, when I really understood what I was doing to my body all of those years. My list of ailments, because I can't just remember off the top of my head, I had a torn labrum in both my left shoulder, my left hip. I herniated 2 of my discs. I have 3 bulging. Arthritis in both my knees, impingement in both my shoulders, something called facet syndrome in my back, which is leading to a pars fracture or Scotty dog fracture, if you know what that is. And I feel like I'm missing something. What am I? Oh, ganglion cysts, both my wrists. Got it. That was a lot of damage that was done to my body in a very short amount of time. I'm 24 years old and I feel like I'm 80. So really, I've got you all beat in the room, just in case you're wondering. But I just operated under the assumption that athletes are going to be in pain. That's what I was told my entire life. You're taking a lot of volume, you're jumping a lot, you're running a lot in soccer, so you're just going to be in pain, and when you're done playing college ball, you're done. Like, there's nothing after that. You're not going to run around with your kids because your knees are going to be shot and you're going to need a double knee replacement. My dad is 50 years old, and 2 years ago he had a double knee replacement, and that is where I was headed. So yeah, that's the philosophy I was operating under, was you're going to be in pain if you're an athlete. And it wasn't until my sophomore year in college that my back got blown out, and that was kind of the end-all be-all of my career, and I just realized, okay, there is something drastically wrong with what is happening here. And that's when I started to kind of adopt the new philosophy of joints should never ever hurt. And so that is our new philosophy that we operate under here and that I operate under as an athletic trainer. But the way that I really honed that was the next couple of years I interned at a strength conditioning clinic, Oak Athletic Development in Chicago, Illinois. They actually work with the Bears when they're there for training camp in the summers. And we did something called the functional movement screen. And the functional movement screen is a system where I can put somebody through a series of tests, look for mobility deficiencies, look for functional movement pattern deficiencies. And then what we would do with that is we would program off of that and teach them the basic fundamentals of movement and biomechanics, and then from that we would move into sport-specific movement. And so what I quickly saw was that none of these athletes that we trained that way were in pain. They were the best in the state. We had people driving hours to come to us, and these kids weren't in pain, and they were the best at what they did, and they went on to be that in college as well. And so I started to look at my athletes that walked through the door in the training room that I was doing therapy on, and even myself as I was training a lot differently, and realized, okay, I've been doing something really wrong here. I've been looking at this pain in my knee as one thing I need to treat. We all know that for tendonitis, PFS, that if your knee hurts, it could be weak quads, weak glutes, my hamstrings could be tight, and I would treat the symptom rather than the system, because pain is not an indicator that one thing has gone wrong. It's an indicator that an entire system is broken down, and that tissue that you're having the pain with, that's kind of taken the blunt end of all the trauma that you've been going through, and it's been overloaded, and now you're broken down. So my philosophy quickly moved to, okay, I'm not going to look at the symptom anymore. I'm going to look at how they move, look at the system that's operating on that knee, and that's how we're going to start operating. And I think I just got off my notes a little bit, but yeah, some of the common problems that we see here, tendonitis in the shoulder and the knee, hot backs. I can tell you, I had all those things, and I did nothing but strength, 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 strength. You saw my terrible blocking form, and actually in the video while we were filming that, Jim was just putting balls like right through my hands in the net because I had all this space and I just felt like an idiot. But I was trained box jumps, squats, power cleans, all of that. I did it all the time, partially because I loved it, but also because I was type A, and so I was in the gym 6 hours a day. And that was just really a recipe for disaster, as I just told you everything that happened. And so I can tell you, you can do all the strengthening you want. You can have the most well-rounded approach to strengthening your entire body. But if you're not taught how to move correctly, then you're not even going to be put in positions where you can use the muscles in the way they're supposed to be used. And real quick, I want to put up there our mission statement. And what I'm telling you is trying to highlight the reason we train sport-specific movement. And we don't just do that in strength and conditioning. We don't just do that in prevention. We do that in my treatment in the training room. It's an all-encompassed approach here at Front Range. And so I just want to look at our mission statement. It says, Front Range Volleyball Club is a nationally prominent competitive program dedicated to advancing the personal and athletic development of youth through the pursuit of excellence in volleyball, fostering a sense of community throughout the club, and promoting leadership in all club members. And what my portion of that is the athletic development of youth through the pursuit of excellence in volleyball. I had a dream that I wanted to be in the Olympics and play beach volleyball. I never got there. I'm also 6'2", but Todd Rogers was 6'2", so I'll have you know he won a gold medal. His partner was 6'8" or 6'9", but whatever, we're not going to go there. I had a dream to do that, and I couldn't because of the way I trained and how that destroyed my body. As an organization, and one of the reasons I came here is because I saw that we're not willing to just teach things the way everybody else does. We have standards, and not only do we have standards, but it's based on science, which my program for athletic training, the goal was evidence-based practice. Everything we do, we have research to back it up. And so I saw that coming here, and I thought, wow, that is crazy, because that is not the general public's thought of, or even healthcare sometimes, of how we treat things in this world. And so as an organization, we are really passionate about equipping your daughters, your athletes, with the tools that they need to not only be successful at the collegiate level. Our goal is not to just get them to college. That would be a really huge disservice to you guys. Our goal is to train them so that they can not only go to college, but that they can play the sport that they love and be a contributing factor and make an impact on the teams where they go. And if they want to take that further, go for it. And then guess what? Like Billy was talking about, they can even go play with their kids afterwards when they have a family and do recreational volleyball, or any sport for that matter, because they're not going to be broken. Our goal is to set them up for the best possible life that they can have with and without volleyball. And so after talking to some of the best PTs, some of the best doctors, some of the best strength conditioning coaches, I mean, come on, you just heard a phenomenal strength conditioning coach. We know that what we do is not just the right thing, but research shows us that it is the best thing. In my role as an athletic trainer, I'm not just here to tape ankles. I'm not going to lie, I'm a boss at it, but that is not my goal. My goal is to keep your girls healthy and not to have them operate under pain, but to be pain-free and to be able to play the sport as much and as long as they want to in their lifetime. And so that's why we train sport-specific movement, because we want to make sure that they're moving in a way that they won't end up breaking down, and that they can excel at and perform, not just get on the court and be there, but give some input to what's happening on the court and influence the game. That's all I've got. The last thing I want to talk about is I am the ankle brace guy. You guys have probably seen our newsletter and gotten an email. We have an awesome ankle brace that we sell here. It's called Ultra Ankle, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. You saw the passing video earlier that Billy showed the ability of athletes to, one, keep their spine upright when they pass, but we also look at squat depth and being able to get your hips below your knees as a really important ability that influences passing and performance in that. And so a lot of ankle braces are very restrictive around your ankles, and what happens is when you lose that range of motion in your ankles, that starts to shoot your knees forward, which then starts to close down some stuff in your hip and doesn't allow you to get in the position that we want, and overloads the wrong tissues and leads to injury. And so we use something called Ultra Ankle. Ultra Ankle allows full range of motion in both plantar and dorsiflexion, which is what we want, but it limits the excessive inversion and eversion, that side-to-side motion that usually leads to an ankle sprain. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me, or I'll be here tonight. Obviously, I'm here, so if you want to talk, I'm free. My email is tanner.garner@FRVBC. All that's on the website. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys.
Well, you can see you're starting to get a taste, I think, for all of our new folks here, where it is that we're trying to come from with everything that we do in the Front Range Volleyball Club. We are in a constant state of learning. Am I on the right screen? No, not yet. So we've got this vision for your daughter. There's a reason for everything we do, and we try and base that on the knowledge that we have. And like I told you earlier, we know too much to train the way we used to train. People train the way we trained 20 and 30 years ago. It's easy. It's hard to keep up with knowledge. It's hard to take knowledge and figure out ways to implement it and evaluate it and see if we're doing it well. But this is the path that we've chosen to do, and this is part of the program that you've chosen to join. So since we've talked to the athletic training specialist and the strength and conditioning training specialist, I'm kind of the volleyball specialist. And you know, one of the things, this just ran 2 days ago or yesterday in the Olympic Coach magazine, and it talks about a developmental plan for youth athletes that we've been using since 1998. The gentleman who first authored this is a gentleman named Istvan Baye, and I had a chance to meet him personally for 3 hours at the Olympic Training Center, and we talked about what goes on in development of youth sports in the United States versus how should youth sports be developed. And he's got this incredible model that takes players through this great progression of development with the intent to take elite players to the elite level, and then every player who wants to continue to be a functional athlete for as long as they want to be a functional athlete. And we've been modeling ourselves after that model. This article that just ran yesterday that I sent to my coaches and asked them to read it all is a little bit of an update on his model by a professor at the University of Florida. And she's taken this model and tweaked it a little bit, and we're kind of discussing that right now as a staff. Next slide. Let's go to video. So now from the volleyball standpoint, let's go to attacking first, and just go ahead and single frame it. So number 15, this is Kim Hill from the U.S. national team, one of the top outside hitters for our national team. And you can see very similar stuff. It's the exact same stuff that Billy was talking. Go ahead and slow her down as she goes through the swing motion, right? Line up the shoulders, rotate the body, and then invert the shoulders as she makes contact. Hips turn first, torso turn second. The player that we're going to see right now on the left side of the screen, and you know our U.S. team won a bronze medal at this last Olympics. Here's the team that won the gold medal at the Olympics. This is Zhu Ting, and you can see very similar mechanics. She's the top outside hitter for China. When I first started coaching internationally and started breaking down tape for our national team, because I'm a trainer of youth athletes, I was fascinated because not everybody plays volleyball the same way. But what I started doing was looking at athletes and at this level and looking for similarities. And then I sought out people like Billy. I sought out people who had degrees in biomechanics. And I said, why are these athletes doing these same or similar things? Obviously, in some skill, there's the ability for some individual variation. But when we look at the top hitters in the world, they all swing remarkably similar. Very few, hardly any athletes at this level have this high elbow setup. It virtually doesn't exist at the international level, yet it is taught all over the United States as the right way to swing. We disagree. This is Matt Anderson, top opposite hitter for our men's national team. He's who you were looking at earlier with Billy. Same thing. This low elbow position, body rotation, invert the elbow position, land on 2 feet. So it doesn't matter what country we look at. When we look at the best in the world, we see these similar things. This is Matt Anderson from the right side, just so you can see same attack mechanics. And by the way, you know, we edit these videos, we show them to all of our players, we show them these models, because they aren't going to get this in a week or a month or a year, but they are going to get it over time. We continue to show them these models and then capture video of them so they can see kind of where they are in the progression of it. There's a couple other hitters I want to see. I want to see the two middles. This is Max Holt. Max Holt, top middle blocker for the United States, and you can see he gets into the position right there that we want. Get that elbow in line with the shoulder, then rotates his body, goes into his contact position. A little bit of a 1 foot landing. A lot of the stability stuff that Billy does, we know we're going to land 1 footed at times in volleyball. A lot of the stability stuff Billy takes our players through helps them. Let's go ahead and stop this. This is Faluka Akinwadenro. Go ahead and now run it frame by frame. She's the top middle blocker for the United States. You can see again, low elbow position there, body rotation, torso rotation, high elbow contact, land on both feet. Male or female doesn't matter. Country doesn't matter. This is the way you swing. This is the way the best players in the world swing. This is what we're going to be teaching your daughters. And if their high school coach tells them this, and if other clubs tell them this, we're going to tell them no. Because we don't want you to tear your shoulder up. Next, let's go to passing. Like I told you earlier, I've been coaching volleyball for most of my adult life, actually. And I hear this all the time out of coaches. Stop. Get low, get low, get low, get low, get low. Screaming it at players, passing in defense. And you know what I see youth players do? Is this good, coach? Am I low? They're low, and they're going to hurt their back, and they're going to hurt their knees, and they aren't going to last. When we look at the best players in the world, look at those. This is Brazil, the year they won the gold medal at the 2000 Olympics. Look at the middle back. Look at the lines I have on the libero. Their torso is up. Their hips are down. Their shins are pretty vertical. And now single frame it. And she's going to get low by dropping her hips. And this takes a lot of training to have that kind of hip mobility and flexibility to take your hips down to the ground. This is how we want to get low. And then play the ball. Go ahead and play it. We'll slow down the next one. Let's slow it down kind of right here. Look at the position. Look at the position of all these players, right? Especially 14. We love 14. She was the best ball control player in the world for about 9 years. Look at their hip position. The ball is being touched by the attacker. And look where her hip position is. In the United States, coaches are like, get low there. You got to get low. you get too low too soon, you can't move, right? So we've got to get athletic and then move out of that athletic position. And then when the ball comes to us, we're going to get low with our hips, take our hips down to the ball, try and keep our spine long so that we can last over time. So this is some of the stuff that we're going to be teaching. Let's go to the average rally video. I want to go back here because as Billy, and just go ahead, take it about halfway through, because we've already seen the international teams. Now just let that run. The international teams were averaging just under 10 seconds a rally. This was one of our 18 and under teams a few years ago, won a bronze medal at Junior Olympics. This is filmed from Junior Olympics against a team that won the silver medal. So two of the best teams in the country in 18 open. And you can see here, what you're going to see is that the average rally is 6 seconds or less. At the highest level in the country, 18 open, rallies lasting 6 seconds or less. And you're going to see something really interesting if you look at the breaks, the red that the international players get, 20 to 30 seconds in between points, and you're going to see much shorter cycles of rest for our players. So Billy and I were actually talking about this one year. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago, Billy, and I had an epiphany as a volleyball coach, because I think in volleyball, most coaches think about it like, well, we got to condition them for the game they've got to play. In the game, a typical match, right, lasts an hour. Inside that match, there are games that last about 20-ish minutes, right? So I would watch coaches run drills for about 20 minutes, thinking they're conditioning their players for the sport of volleyball. The epiphany I had is Billy and I were in a conversation every year, because in case you haven't got it yet, we are always working to be better. How can we're taking knowledge, we're examining it, we're trying to look at it different ways. How can we take this knowledge and make it better? We're talking about conditioning one day, and it's like, we know this is what exists in volleyball. So this is how we're going to try and run practices, right? Like Billy showed you, 75% of the time working at this level with the red rest periods. But then we looked at it like, what we're trying to condition them for is the number of points they're going to play. So then we said, well, how many points do they play in an average match? It's approximately 100 points, between 100 and 125 points. Well, if that's going to be the average match, what are they going to play on an average day at a power league or at a qualifier? 3-match day, 300 to 350 points, 4-match day, or if you've got to play one of those tiebreakers, now we're getting into the 400, 450 points a day. This is how we're trying to condition our athletes to tolerate the number of points that they're going to play. They're going to play points at this kind of work-to-rest ratio. This is what's driving our conditioning throughout the year. So we're going to start training our players to tolerate this number of points throughout the year. We try and get to about 175 points of tolerance by the time the qualifier season starts, because you can't just jump out here and play 300 points, because somebody's going to get hurt, because they're going to get fatigued, right? We've got to condition them for this. And then by the time we get to the end of the season, our teams that are playing open, older teams, we're trying to get them to tolerate about 300, 350 points a day, because that's what they're going to be doing at the end of the year, multi-day events, right? So this is just an example of how we're trying to take knowledge, use it, and then improve what we're doing in the gym with our players. So, stuff I started off with tonight, the 3 goals that we've got for our teams every year. Developing high-functioning teams, I talked about that earlier. High-functioning physically, high-functioning mentally, high-functioning interpersonally, right? Second thing, helping your daughters realize her potential. Billy told you how we're going to do it physically. I've showed you things we're going to key on to do it technically. There's tactical things we're going to do with them. There's strategy things we're going to do with them. We're going to try and get them to realize their potential while they're here. And Kathleen told you how close a lot of them are to maybe their potential. They may never be any better than they are when they're here. And then we want to educate our players to not just excel now, but also in the future. They have to, our goal is by the time they leave here, they can talk intelligently to the strength coach they're going to play for in college, intelligently to the volleyball coach they're going to have in college, and really talk about, I've learned this about myself, about my training, about my playing, you know, and really have conversations with those people so that they can be an active participant in their development. And then they go on to, you know, they go on to professionally. I have so many of our players come back and train with me professionally in the summer, and it's like they want these things back. You know, it's like, I've lost this, Jim, I've lost experience at this, you know, and then we kind of refresh them to the whole thing because they want to take control of their development. We want to give them the tools to take control of their development. So that's kind of a little taste of what your daughters are going to be experiencing and some of the why behind what we're doing. Our last presenter for the night, she promised me this is going to be short. No pressure. Is our full-time recruiting coordinator for college, Jen Youngblood, and she's going to explain to you a little bit about college recruiting because, you know, that's probably why a lot of you are here.
All right, so as Jim said, my name is Jennifer Youngblood. In addition to coaching here at Front Range, I'm also the Director of Collegiate Recruiting Services. So my role here is to educate and provide information to Front Range players and parents on general recruiting policies, assist in communication with college programs, and help our players manage their individual recruiting profile on a recruiting platform, software platform called volleyballrecruits.net. So some of you might be familiar with Volleyball Recruits already, but for those of you that aren't, I want to give everyone kind of a brief overview of what the platform is and all that it has to offer. As a club, we integrated with Volleyball Recruits primarily because of its ease of use, organization, and the transparency it gives our players and parents in the recruiting process. It also provides tools that gives our players the ability to communicate with college programs directly through an internal messaging system, and it helps them determine what their collegiate needs are through a school search functionality. Every single volleyball program in the country has a profile on Volleyball Recruits. So it gives our athletes the ability to contact any program in any state, in any division that they might be interested in. Front Range has a club profile. Range has a club page on Volleyball Recruits that lists all of our high school teams and players in one place for college coaches to view. From there, coaches can view the individual profiles of any of our players. Within your player profile, Volleyball Recruits gives you the ability to add pictures, highlight in-game videos, personal statistics, contact information, press clippings, athletic honors, academic accolades, and school transcripts. Here you can see the profile of one of our older athletes in the program. Her name is Carson, who has completely filled out her profile and is a really great example of what a robust profile on Volleyball Recruits looks like. You can see that Carson has uploaded quite a few videos onto her profile, and she does a great job of keeping all of her information updated regularly. So as you can see, those are all kind of the things that I mentioned. Athletic honors, academic honors. From her profile, she can also favorite schools. That's a great way to keep track of the schools that she's interested in. Next, she can view her activity feed. And our activity feed is going to be something that's going to look really similar to like a Facebook feed that provides notifications to Carson and her parents anytime she gets a video or a profile view from a college coach. The activity feed also provides a detailed record of every communication and interaction the player has had with every college program that they've ever talked to on the site. So you can easily go back to things. And then she can send messages directly to college coaches without leaving the site or having to look up their email address. Again, very easy type in any college, write whatever you want, update them easily, quickly, all very user-friendly. A big part of the college selection process is determining what kind of college experience your daughter will want, and Volleyball Recruits has tools to help with that as well. Through the school search functionality, I can search for any college to do research on them, again without leaving to have the Volleyball Recruits website. I can see their enrollment size, division, conference, and the names of their coaching staff. I can also see the admissions acceptance rate, median test scores accepted by that college, and information about costs and financial aid to attend the school. So here you can see this school search functionality. They've got tons of different kind of qualifiers that you can use to figure out what sort of school you might want to be interested in looking at. Say, for example, I went onto a site and I wanted to compare the value of a Division I scholarship to a Division II scholarship. That information is easily accessible and readily available for me. So these are some of the major features of Volleyball Recruits. As you can see, it's a really intuitive software platform, and more importantly, allows players to be the driving force in their own recruiting process. I also want to speak about a recruiting philosophy at Front Range. It's important to understand and be aware that collegiate volleyball is highly competitive. I'd like to share some statistics with you all. According to the NCAA, only 6.2% of female high school volleyball players will go on to play volleyball in college. Since 2000, 100% of Front Range seniors have gone on to play college volleyball. Nationally, 1.2% of volleyball players will play at the Division I level. Compare that to 72% of Front Range volleyball players who receive scholarships to play at the Division I level. So we really believe that at Front Range, our training program, so all the things that you were hearing about before my presentation, and our recruiting philosophy are reinforced by the rates at which we send our players to college, often to the very best college programs. We believe that players themselves have to be actively engaged in the college recruiting process in order to find the best fit, athletically and academically. We want to facilitate recruiting for our families and provide them with the tools, information, and guidance they need to make a decision that will work best for their daughter. Other clubs may try to sell their players to schools. We don't do this because it often results in players who are unhappy in the college they sign with. They end up having to transfer and start the process all over again. We believe that if a player and her parents manage the recruiting process with our help, they will be better equipped to find a school and volleyball program that meets all of their individual needs and is ultimately a place where they can be happy and find success while achieving their goals of becoming a college volleyball player. So, kind of a brief overview, but I'm super passionate about coming into work every day and working with your daughters and giving them the tools that they need to kind of achieve their dreams and realize their dreams. So I get really excited about recruiting. I hope they are going to love recruiting and get excited about it as well. At this point in the evening, we're going to break into our individual teams to discuss some team-specific materials. So we're going to have you guys look for your head coach and a place to gather with your team.